Infertility isn't just a medical journey. It's a grief process that most people don't even recognize as grief. It impacts your body, your identity, your relationship, your sense of hope. And for a lot of people, it's happening quietly, without support or understanding. In this episode, we're talking about the emotional and relational side of infertility that doesn't get talked about enough, from loss and shame to intimacy, sex, and what it takes to stay connected through it. If you've ever felt alone in this experience, this conversation is for you. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Lunar Counseling Podcast. I'm your host, Kiara Brown, a licensed professional counselor, EMDR certified therapist, certified hypnotherapist, and the owner of Lunar Counseling. This podcast is a space for grounded, real conversations with therapists, healers, and guides about the deeper layers of mental health, trauma, and what truly means to heal and integrate in sustainable ways. Today, I am so pleased to welcome Kimberly Koll to the podcast. Kimberly is a licensed professional counselor and mental health counselor practicing across multiple states via telehealth. She earned her master's degree in social school and mental health counseling from Butler University and brings over a decade of experience supporting individuals and couples through grief, loss, and significant life transitions. Sorry about the couple there. Kimberly spent 5 years in hospice counseling and another 5 years working in third-party reproduction, infertility, and reproductive loss. This gives her a uniquely compassionate and informed lens into both the emotional and relational dimensions of grief, especially the kinds of loss that are often invisible or quietly carried. As a military spouse, she also supports families navigating relocation, separation, and the identity shifts that come with constant change. Her work integrates acceptance and commitment therapy and sex therapy principles, and she's currently working toward her ASEC National Sex Therapist certification. Kimberly helps clients process grief, rebuild intimacy, reconnect with their values, and cultivate resilience in the midst of life's most challenging seasons. Her approach is more non-judgmental and deeply rooted in helping people find meaning and strength when the path forward feels uncertain. So welcome, Kimberly. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm so excited to be here. I love doing these. I love just educating the public about such taboo topics because I have like a little abundance of taboo topics. I love chatting about them and I'm
Yeah.
passionate about them.
Yeah. So I'd love to get everyone started by asking what brought you into the therapy space?
So, what kind of led to my therapy journey or
Yeah.
perfect? Yeah. So, originally I was always interested in helping others. Just in my mind, deep in my mind, for many years, I thought I was going to be a school counselor. I thought for sure I was going to be a school counselor, which is why I had the double masters. And, but when I started my journey, it's like one of those things that when I first went to school, I thought I want to be a teacher. I'm like, no, no, no. Something with that, I just don't want to be that many group of kids. But I really love school settings. And so in my mind, I thought 100% I was going to be a school counselor. And the first couple of years of my career, I was in the schools. For about 3 years, I was in the schools. However, during that time, I was going through my own infertility journey that lasted a decade. And that was
Wow.
the start of my infertility journey. And so it became my biggest passion, became my biggest burnout really fast, seeing all these kids around me and seeing all these people get these amazing milestones in life. And here I felt like I was being left behind, even though I had some master's degree. And I was really, and I was in schools, like what I always dreamed, but someone was missing. And then when I had several miscarriages in that 3 year time span
Oh,
when we
wow.
were actively trying. And so it became a little bit too much working around parents that didn't seem to value parenthood the same as how I envisioned how I always wanted to be a mom too. And so that kind of was the start of my journey. And during this time, I was always a volunteer grief and loss counselor. Like during grad school, they voluntold us we had to. And so we had to volunteer for a year as part of we had to sign a contract at Butler, everything. And I thought I was absolutely gonna hate it. But then ended up being one of those things like, wow, I really like this. And then at the same time, I was starting to go through my infertility journey, like while I was in grad school and didn't realize it. And so I started to put like the lines together, how infertility and grief are hands in hand together. So I was a volunteer grief and loss counselor for 4 years, off and on. Then my husband joined the military. And then from there, and then our first base, I ended up landing a job at hospice where I was at for about 5 years. And so that's kind of how it really like everything was. I feel like it's like the dominoes effect with my career, where one thing led to one thing, and then to the next, then the next, and then the next. With specialties and really niche between like infertility, grief, and especially working. 'Cause grief is one of my biggest topics. I work with people that are going through losses, anticipatory loss, whether that's through pregnancy or families in hospice care. And I find it the most awarding thing in the world. And especially as a military spouse too, we grieve every time we move to a new base every couple of years and have to start all over. And so it's amazing how grief impacts us so many different ways and so many different life transitions. And I absolutely love it. And so I feel like it really molded me to how I got to where I am today.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, like, just so on the, like, the military spouse part of things and, like, your own infertility journey, how did that impact, like, your treatment process? Because if you're moving every 2 years and, like you said, you were having this journey for, like, 10 years, it's like 5 bases and, like, changing
So
doctors.
luckily COVID stabilized us for a little bit. And
Okay.
so with COVID, we were supposed to go to why not North Dakota, but stop that right in the tracks. And so I was like, I mean, Wyoming's not much better, but it's a step up because we're on the border of Colorado where all the fun stuff is, where we lived. And so we had to do all our grocery shopping in Fort Collins. So you had to go to a college town that had Costco and had all the Trader Joe, had all the fun spots, right? And you got a conservative family for even an afternoon, right? And so I got to be there luckily for 6 years. That stabilized us for a little bit. And so that was a blessing. It was a huge blessing for me. But yeah, so kind of answer that in our own infertility journey. I had a lot of doctors that were like, because I have PCOS, and they were like,
I
this
do.
you're like yeah, so you're like the poster child why we do Clomid and Femera. This will work, no problem. And we don't need to refer you out. Like this will all be fine. This will work. And then they gave me a lot of false hope because they didn't know what they were talking about. And so at one point in Clomid, I was on 200 milligrams, which is like unheard of, off and on for 3, 4 years between when we lived in Indiana before my husband joined the military to Wyoming when when we were in California for 9 months. So we were like, we'll just try to do time intercourse and try that way. And then that didn't work, obviously. And so when we went to Wyoming, I actually had an amazing OBGYN that struggled with infertility himself. And he has twins from their infertility journey and from having to seek out additional help. And so he's like, just for your insurance, I'm going to do one cycle with you and we're just going to send you on to Denver. And they have world-class people in Denver that can treat your needs. And you shouldn't have to do this. This is too much. You should have been referred years ago. And so I finally had that one empathetic doctor that was listening for the first time ever. And by then oh gosh, we were in about years 5, 6 of using a medical provider because we went years without using a medical provider. And so this was like right in year 5-ish when we finally had someone that listened to us and just referred us out. And that was amazing. And then when I got to Denver, I had really empathetic people that were really proactive and really not shamey the process. Because unfortunately, we lived in several conservative states that would shame the process and shame me for going through infertility because it was usually always my fault, not my husband's fault. Granted, I was the underlying issue, but it just kind of added to that shame and that guilt that comes with infertility.
Yeah, and I mean, my journey was not as long as yours, but I completely remember, like,
Oh, yeah, just lose
saying
weight. Yeah, just lose weight, you'll be fine, or here's some Clomid, this'll work, and this'll work, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is perfect, this is gonna fix it," and then I wouldn't even ovulate on it, and it's like, you get a lot of dingbats along the way with medical providers that just I don't know if it's too much pride or they're overreaching, I'm not sure, just not that educated, I'm guessing, on that particular topic. It's kinda like mental health where I know us providers sometimes even we're like, this is fine, this will work. And it gets to a point though when you have to have enough sense and ethically be able to know when to refer out.
And it says that really is true because like, I remember like, with the first the gynae that diagnosed me with PCOS, like her response was, "Yeah, just lose weight." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I've been working on losing weight since I was 12.
Right. How do
So
I fix this? Yeah.
yeah, like what can I do differently than what I've been doing since I was 12 years old?" She's like, "Just watch what you eat."
It's like, yeah,
Like,
it's like,
cool.
yeah, that doesn't work. And then it's like, I'm not even having periods. So how am I gonna ovulate so I can have the magic swimmer hit my eggs? Like, how's this even gonna work if my body's not even releasing the magic egg, right? It's like it's like so illogical and it gets and it kind of makes people afraid to go to doctor's offices on this topic. And especially here in the South where we're currently living in Louisiana, it's very spiritual down here, very spiritual. I mean, I love to explore spirituality and things like that, but in our local area alone, we have over 200 Baptist churches, and that's just Baptist churches. That's not other denominations, and so you kind of hear a lot of underlying things of shame, especially when I see sexual health clients in particular. A lot of people going through shame of like having sexual health issues with like ejaculation or not arousing or and sometimes they blame like, well, I must be doing something wrong for God, or I'm doing something that I'm not pleasing husband, or I'm not being obedient enough. And then that's when we do a lot of psychoeducation on consent, and as well as, well, what is sex to you? Because it looks very different to multiple different people with what they define as sex, and kind of help them establish that nice healthy self-esteem, and certainly lower those anxiety levels towards the subject of sex, because a lot of times it's something they just don't talk about growing up, and shame, like there's a lot of shame talking about sexual health in the household. And growing up in a very religious household, it's like I could totally see that even with that, because I was in Indiana, so very conservative there too,
Yeah.
and northern Indiana, where it's extremely conservative. And so there's a lot of shame that comes with that. And on the topic of infertility too, where I remember even being told, well, you just need to pray harder. And when you're grateful for what you got, God will bless you. And it's just like things like that. So unhelpful. So unhelpful on so many people's journeys.
Yeah, that is really true because also part of it, especially like on the spiritual aspects, especially like the really deep devout Christians, it's like one of the things that women are supposed to do is procreate and like bring about the next generation. And
Yeah.
like and like so like the shame piece and like guilt comes into play, like whenever I'm like, so I'm the woman, I'm supposed to be able to do this, but my body's not working. So like what did I do wrong? Or like what's wrong with
And,
me? And it's like,
and, and I love having this debate with like Christian people with, if you want to take it there, God put these technologies in certain people's hands and discoveries, and they put it in our hands for a reason. And if you truly are pro life, why wouldn't you want to bless more families with procreation with these beautiful technologies that God has blessed us with, and science He has given us from above? And sometimes people just need a lot of heavy psycho ed. Like, yeah, people aren't bioengineered in the IVF lab. That's not how this works. And most people don't wake up and say, I want to go do IVF today. I want to go spend $30,000-$40,000 of infertility treatment, because a lot of times it's not covered on with most insurance plans. I mean, granted, a lot of more liberal states in particular are starting to put that in their insurance coverage. So it's becoming finally accessible for people that want parenthood, especially in third party reproduction. We're seeing a lot more people that have those benefits that they can pursue parenthood for the first time ever. And they thought this was unreachable for whatever reason that is. And so it's finally blessing people with this accessibility finally. So hopefully, and then influencers too. It's such a heavy political topic in recent years with IVF and pro life, pro choice, right? And so it's becoming a lot more influenced with like public figures too. With those influencers are finally educating the public enough that talks them, like give them the psycho ed on TikTok or Instagram, whatever social media platform. And like on the third party reproduction side, when I'm doing like psych evals, we're finally getting like I've been doing that for 4.5 years now, almost 5. And we're getting more quality candidates from it because the public is getting more educated about it, and more people that are going into it for the right reasons. Now that they have that information, because knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's so true. And I agree with you. Like the influencers that are actually talking about like their own infertility journeys, or even if they go the surrogate route or they have to do the IVF treatments,
Yeah.
actually like taking people on like with them on that journey allows you to actually really see what it really is. It's not like you said, like, I mean, getting cooked up in a lab. That's not what the journey is like. It's not what doctors do.
No, yeah, you don't get to pick the eye color, the hair color, and things like that. And most ethical clinics, they will do the best blastocyst or egg that is part of your journey. They will use the best quality. You don't get to pick the sex a lot of the time. You're going to use the best quality one at most ethical places, unless they're equal. The blastocysts are equal, then you may get to decide at some clinics, but they will, because they also want high success rates. They want this to be successful. And so usually if most partners or most people that are going through an IVF journey, they've had to go through like years and years of hurdles, and they don't give a shit what gender the baby is. They just want a baby. And they're shooting for the dream and that hope and the ultimate dream of parenthood that has been unreachable for many, many years for most people.
Yeah, that's so true. And it is crazy how like how taboo it still is to talk about. I'm like, but right now, like, there's so much infertility, not just with women, but also with men. That happens
Absolutely. I
a lot.
I chat with a lot of men. And actually, if you want to talk like military stacks, about I want to say it was like almost a quarter of military families in particular at one point or another had struggled with like infertility. And then if you want to take it up game a little bit, I think it's like about 40% of female service members struggle with infertility. And so that's a pretty high number considering TRICARE does not cover IVF. However, their federal counterparts doing the same exact job, they do cover IVF. It's just the military TRICARE that does not cover it. VA benefits does cover it for those people that are using those, or like our lovely US representatives get their insurance. It's covered. IVF is covered. However, their service members, our lovely House Speaker, shot that down, even though it was a bipartisan thing back in January. I think it was January, December when he shot that down. So military families do not get that access, even though 40% of like active duty service, like female active duty struggle with infertility to some capacity. It's absolutely shameful, especially someone that works in the military community, part of the military community. My husband and I, for example, we stayed for 4 years for our IVF treatment. We assumed the worst case scenario when we started seeking out medical intervention from like OBGYNs, and we started saving at that point, luckily. We didn't think it'd go to IVF, but we were like, oh, well, maybe this will make the baby fun for when the baby gets here. And then the baby never got here. And so ended up becoming the IVF funds.
I mean, that's smart, like, having starting to save for it. I mean, my husband's in the military as well. He's not active duty, but, like, even still, like, just talking to some of his friends that were active duty that then went to, like, the National
Mhm.
Guard where he's in, it's, like, just the amount of their experiences are just, like, crazy. And, like,
Oh, yeah.
as well, like, my husband will tell me that he'll go for his medical checkups, and they're giving him shots that he's like, "Yeah, this gave me shots. I don't know what it was." It's talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy. No, it really is, and especially because guys don't realize, like, I wanted to say, like, the stat is, like, close to about, like, a quarter, I believe, of, like, males struggle with, like, male factor infertility. The couple is struggling with infertility issues, and that's a pretty high percentage when you're thinking about infertile couple. And sometimes there's secondary infertility that there's no rhyme or reason. They had a baby before, this time just isn't clicking, but something isn't clicking. And people don't realize all the losses that come with that. And at the medical treatment in particular, but when you're going through an infertility treatment, because you lose autonomy to your body, everything's playing. And even sexual the stuff, it's playing. It's playing down to the hour pretty much. And you feel like you are a productivity line at the factory with when it's time for sexy time for because you have to do time in after, especially because infertility in itself, if you're under the age of 35, is defined as 12 months of actively trying. So imagine those like those and that's assuming you ovulate too. I mean, some people don't ovulate like us. And so kind of with that, imagine like all those times having sex between then and then, like then to the point when you get declared as infertile. And then if you're over age 35, then it's 6 months. But imagine all that sexy time, like a productivity line. And then on top of it, when you get to that point, you're doing meds. And then it's even then you have all the side effects of the meds. And then you have to go through it again even longer. And there's no like there it's not guaranteed. None of this is guaranteed that's gonna work. And the only thing like bigger than that a fear that it's not gonna work is hope. And it's that hope that you go into every cycle, hoping that this will be the cycle that you finally get to achieve parenthood.
Yeah, it is. That is so true. I mean, my journey was not as long as yours. Mine was only 3 years, but I had like what they call like for PCOS, like the A ovulation
Yeah.
periods, because and all that
Yeah.
fun jazz.
And
And
ovulation,
yeah, and was able to get pregnant with Coleman, but I had to do 5 rounds of it before
And
I.
and the side effects for Clomid are insane.
Mhm.
Like hot sweats, you feel like you're going crazy, you feel like you're crawling in your own skin. The hot flashes are something unreal. And you feel like you're kind of raging sometimes at random things. And oh my gosh, the side effects. Oh,
Yeah, and you did a lot longer than I did, so I can only imagine how bad it was for you. And I mean, for me, honestly, I do credit like the quarantine piece because I was working in home. I was doing in home therapy at the time, so I was getting calls like
yeah.
super late. Especially being able to be home at a decent time, actually have the time and
Oh yeah, the
schedule to have.
window. The
Yeah,
window.
yeah, the window was like super important that I didn't have before then.
Absolutely. And then when you have to do in that time window, it's like, well, that affection and intimacy that you normally get, so well, that's out the window. It's like, okay, let's just get this done. Let's just get
Yeah,
this done. And then you lose that passion, and then you feel like a blow up doll, pretty much. Like you don't feel like you're you. This isn't me. Like I don't know, I don't recognize me or what this is with us, and it dehumanizes us.
yeah, because like, yeah, you're the point like it's a factory. It's like just doing a
Oh
thing to
yeah,
hopefully get get
absolutely.
ready. So,
And then
what
the
do you forget?
Oh yeah, then you gotta talk about the males too. They're kind of helpless through this whole process. They're 100% helpless, like because they're not trying to one up the other person, but they're also actively grieving. And it's not like they can complain about like the side effects of Clomid, or they can complain about the side effects of like the female that is active. And I love to say like I'm talking about cis like heterosexual couples during this. I'm not bashing like same sex couples or anything like that, but heterosexual couples going through infertility. And but the guys, they certainly they have to struggle a lot internally because they're too scared to talk to their partner about what the losses they're going through, because they know it does not physically measure up to what the female is going through. And so they internalize a lot. And then they too get the hunt is taken from them pretty much when they feel like a productivity line, and kind of like a porn star, like, okay, let's just get up and go. And then they end up having performance anxiety because it's high pressure for them. And then that foreplay or whatever is gone because you just want to get done and over with when you're on night 4 of doing it in a row. And they're just kind of over it too themselves. And it dehumanizes them too. And they internalize a lot.
Yeah. So whenever you're working with your couples on their journey, how do you help them find their spark back so like they don't lose each other or lose themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I actually started doing my sex therapy like certification because I noticed I worked with often with like intended parents, going through like surrogacy, as well as parents go through grief, and so see that infertility side. And one of the things that I noticed I was a huge deer in headlights with was the topic of sex, which is crazy because infertility, one of the main topics is sex. And so, and that spark that you have. And I'm like, I am really lacking here. And ethically, it's like I seriously need a lot more training in this arena because it's so impactful because sexual health, it is mental health. And and when that's impacted, you because the three basic human needs, right? Food, sex, and shelter. And sex is that intimacy, procreation, feeling loved, being loved. And I noticed one of my big downfalls was I really lack sex education, especially coming from a very Christian household that shamed sex, shamed any topic of masturbation. You don't do that, you're going to burn in hell. You don't have sex until you get married. Otherwise, you're going to go to hell. And so obviously I had like to work on my own things as well during that process. And luckily through like my like sex therapist programming, you have to do a thing called SARS. So it's like your sexual assessment of like those biases and natural biases you have towards like different things and notice and know your triggers. That way you can address them before you go work on other people's triggers. That way you're not projecting anything or shutting down during sessions yourself, which
Yeah.
is amazing. It's one of the most eye-opening experiences I've had in my career, hands down, going through that and that particular part of the programming. And so one of the big things that helping people establish that spark is kind of really processing, well, what did sex look like before you're trying to procreate? And exploring how what it means to take back your own body and take back your own experience and getting more attuned to your body right now because it's when you go through infertility you have to do all the treatment and everything and your body doesn't feel like yours anymore. And so it's getting comfortable back in your own skin again and maybe doing some self-discovery of things that you were initially into before you had this journey and digging
Yeah.
more into it and like really digging into like, well, what were you guys into before this journey? Before you had this dark cloud shadowing you and following you around? What was your sex life like before that? Especially couples that have been together for a good while. And sometimes they can't even remember what that looks like. They don't remember because they almost immediately went to, well, I followed the life's milestone. So if you get married, then you have a baby. And so some people, it's kind of going back into ground zero, but just like starting over again. Okay, well, let's explore what you guys are into and explore. Does someone have kinks? Does someone, because 60% of couples, somebody has kinks. Somebody in that couple got kinks, and 60% of couples has some kind of kink going on. And let's take off and run with that if you do. But again, it goes into being comfortable in your own skin. So maybe doing like things like sensate focus or getting more attuned in that mindfulness of your like what's going on with the other person's body and respecting their boundaries, as well as respecting your own boundaries and knowing your own triggers. Because sometimes after infertility journey, it's really hard for people to get re-engaged even after, let's say if you did achieve that amazing milestone of parenthood, but then you're kind of into the phase of like, well, now I feel like it's a different type of my body's no longer mine anymore. Now it's the baby's.
Yeah.
And so like the babies, like my life, like especially if you're nursing. Sorry if you
Oh
see my
gosh.
dog in the back of the yeah, it's my Saint Bernard. She's always in my business. But it's say like especially if you're breastfeeding, you feel like, oh my gosh, this baby depends on me. Everything is revolves around breastfeeding and all this. And I feel like my body is no longer my own. And so kind of getting people to that point where they're comfortable in their own bodies again and being patient with yourself with it. And that's the biggest thing because you don't even realize what your triggers are until you're in the moment. And then you're like, oh crap, what do I do? And so processing those moments where people feel like they hit a brick wall and like, well, what led up to this? And especially like I said earlier with males, a lot of times they have performance anxiety. And so they need to address that anxiety with their usually within like their own safe therapeutic setting that someone's not judging them and they know they're not trying to like feel like they're one-upping someone because they often feel a lot of guilt with talking to their spouses that they know on the physical level is going through a lot more in them with the side effects of those meds and often ultimately the women are the ovens and so they have a lot of self-blame if a cycle fails. And even though
Yes.
sometimes it's a male factor in fertility, it's nothing the female did, but they still feel they put a lot of blame on themselves. And then the male, if it's male factored infertility, they have a lot to work on because they lost that machoism, that masculinity. And sometimes that takes a little bit for them to process because they have such high pressure going into sexual environments that they feel like they're not worthy or there's some underlying trauma too with males where they feel like especially if you have any male that's gone through like sexual trauma because they're like even less likely than women to report it and processing that a little bit to help them on their sexual health journey. And
Yeah.
same with females too, because obviously our past trauma, especially if it's sexual health related, will influence how you see sex as an adult later in life. And you might have certain parts of your body that is a non-negotiable don't touch me zone. And so it's really important to have that healthy communication and build that communication, especially with couples and helping them build really safe communication with one another. And especially kinks. One of the beautiful things about kinks, if you're into kinky stuff with sex, there's a lot of communication going forward with kink
Yes.
and you're giving a lot of directives with kink. And some people, especially neurodivergent people, if your spouse or whoever partner is neurodivergent, they thrive in sexual environments where they're not playing the guessing game and they have clear cut instructions like this is no, this is yes, tell me what to do. It's very black and white. You don't stray that far in the gray. And so they thrive in those sexual environments with kink a lot of the time. And so it can really enhance relationships too if you just know what your kinks are. Cause again, some people come from like really religious like how like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine doing kink. And then they watch a couple things and know it's like they're getting turned on to certain porn videos or partner acting out like, wow, this kind of turns me on and
Yeah.
then really digging into that too.
Yeah, I think that's really true too. It's like, it's oddly finding back like the spark that even kind of brought them together, like why they wanted to be together in the first place.
Yeah.
And like exploring the kink is like so fun. I love having people explore their kinks because it's just like it's
That's a
it's like
fun thing. Like
it is so
it's
fun.
such a big zone. It's such a big, like, it's a legit spectrum.
Yeah,
It's crazy how much kink there is. And some things that you're doing, you don't even realize it's kinky.
yeah, because there's more than just like vanilla missionary sex. Like you can like have
Oh,
fun with
yeah.
it. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I love kink too because it brings the fun back to sex too. It's not just like
Absolutely.
the rote motion of
And
the
you
ocean
know,
thing.
yeah, absolutely. Some people like doing performances, and it gives you the chance to be that person that you don't get to be during the day. And you can put a different mask on and be extra sexy and, and feel like you're finally being the person you want to be. And it's fun, like talking to people in counseling sessions. Like, okay, well, tell me this persona that you are projecting. Tell me about what qualities of this person do you like, and why did you choose that for the bedroom? And then you learn about amazing character traits or confidence, or it's like, okay, well, let's talk about ways that you can use those skills in everyday life. And so it's amazing how much sexual health impacts our actual mental health.
Yeah, and like I love how you can just like you can be like a different persona. Like even like people that are like have it all together during there, they're like
Oh,
really
yeah.
high executive, and then like in the
Oh,
bedroom, they want to be the ones that told what to do. They don't want to be the ones that are in control.
I
And
and even some people, actually, they're the ones doing furries and things like that. Like that's what they're into, like being something completely different than what they were thrown into society as and the pressure in. And they finally get to kick back and be the person they really want to be behind closed doors. Which so because sex is like the ultimate thing of vulnerability. You have to be able to
yes,
trust that person, and it's very intimate. Yeah, and that vulnerability, because a lot of times people have a really hard time being vulnerable and they have a really hard time being vulnerable and honest with themselves. It's like, well, this is what I'm really into. And sometimes it's really hard to communicate that to partners because they're afraid they're going to be judged. And that's when sometimes when you find out someone's looking at secret porn or someone's straying a little bit because their spouse or significant other's a little vanilla. And so sometimes it's kind of educating their partner, like, okay, well, let's try to find a middle ground. Like, because let's try to find it, even though if you're vanilla, that's not, it turns you off. Okay, let's find a nice, happy middle ground that everyone can compromise with, or maybe explore, is there alternative things that obviously get you going, but not to the full on degree. Because there are some really weird ass kinks out there, and very specialized kink that you can't naturally do sometimes, like with like bestiality or dead bodies, things like that. Like obviously that's not easy access things that you can just do. And so and sometimes
And they're
it's
not
yeah,
legal
you have
either.
to yeah, no, they are not. And so it's one of those things you kind of have to explore and like usually people those type of kinks they're not gonna openly say. And this is like kind of when a debate comes on. I learned this in my sexual therapy program actually, where there's actually debates and I know I'm gonna like I've heard other people give and I'm not saying I agree to this at all. I'm just gonna throw out what's been talked about. And
Okay.
so there's some debates should like pedophilia be put in the LGBTQI umbrella because of it's a sexual preference. And so obviously it's never going to be in the alphabet, that alphabet ever. But there's some actually pretty strong points of why it should be included. And it has to go stems down to you can't change that person's outlook, just how you can't change a person's like bisexuality or transgender. You can't change that's just part of who they are. And it's sexual health related. It's never gonna get into those umbrella, obviously, ever. And so that was one of those things that was like, oh my God. And I'd like that same look on your like that face you just gave with that when I first heard that. And I was just like, holy shit, like no, like that's disgusting. But then when they started going on all the things, I'm like, I see where they're going with, but do I agree with it? No, not at all. And that's kind of what the other like obviously one of the big taboos that like those it's not obviously not legal or anything like that. But people can have thriving sex lives are that are part of that umbrella of pedophilia. They can have thriving sex lives and they just have to learn other mechanisms to with that sexual health side, whether that's like dolls or really young, like adults that look younger, like whatever, right? Obviously, it's never condoning that ever in a million years. Especially like having kiddos myself now after our infertility, I could never ever condone that, and that's just no, absolutely not. But yeah, I had the same exact look on my face when I first heard that. I'm like, why, what the hell would you put that in? That makes zero sense. But it's because it comes down to it's a sexual health and that you can't just you can't just take that out of someone, whether they're into that or they're not. And a lot of
Yeah.
times they know at pretty young ages that they're into that. And just kind of how sometimes like gay people, they know they're gay at a really young age. And so that's just one of the biggest like bricks hitting me moments in my sexual health program where I'm like, oh God, like, did someone really just say that out loud? Like, what? 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 And then
But they were
I hear like, why? But then you hear the backstory, well, why? I'm like, I get the argument, but no, no.
because like yeah, I can see it. I can see the argument. I can see it, but yeah, I have young kids myself, and I'm like, nope. Like I am
No,
very much like a
no,
mama bear. Like
no.
you touch my kid, like I'm going to jail. Yeah, I do.
No, and I feel like most people that do achieve and value parenthood, because everyone values parenthood, I think most of us that value that, like, absolutely, like, yeah, like, we're gonna go to jail, we're gonna hire a hitman, we're gonna do whatever, they're gonna die, they're gonna pay, and that's why you see people that do take laws into their own hands at people that the law was very lenient on very heinous sex crimes with children. And when you see people that take it in their own hands, oftentimes they have like record breaking GoFundMe's, and that's probably for a reason. And there's a reason why justice takes its course in jail and why they have to separate them. And because I think most people value children and value that innocence of childhood and having kiddos themselves and knowing that love and someone hurting their kids, they would never condone that, and not in a million years. And yeah, I think most people would agree, like, yeah, they're probably gonna go to jail if you hurt my baby.
Yeah. And I worked a lot with adults that have been victims of childhood sexual assault.
Yes.
And that's like one of my main people I work with. And just like the lasting impact that has on them, even as an
Oh
adult.
gosh.
Like,
Oh yeah. And I
like,
see a lot of, like, I have several male military veterans and or active duty members on my caseload. And this is something they would never tell anyone out loud in a million, like some of the biggest heinous things that happened to them as children. And now it's impacting their sexual health in different ways now. And it's concerned because they're losing that machoism that they have. Like, and off, like, they join the military 'cause it's like the ultimate macho, and it's like off like the one of the biggest forms of masculinity, wearing that uniform. And when they're like, I used to try to get laid a lot after I first joined, and girls go after it. It's like a moth to a flame. That's why I did it, because I love sex. But problem is, can't hold it. And then you find out, and like, or I can't be intimate with the people that I truly care about. And they have really high performance anxiety. And then you kind of go on the underrooting thing. And a lot of times there's sexual trauma as they were going, but they will never voice it out loud to people because they don't want to look like a pussy, or don't want to look like demasculine. And so a lot of them hold such big weights on their shoulders. And it's amazing to see their journeys once they release that way and
yeah,
process that trauma and see them thrive afterwards. And because there's no medical reason why they're like pre-ejaculating, there's no medical reason why they're having prolonged ejaculate. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's anxiety, it's psychological. And a lot of times they do have a lot, like, there's are very times when they felt a lot of shame with sexuality, and it causes into other issues in their lives later. And those are some of the most rewarding things I've worked in the last, like, couple years, like, with that particular population, especially with male sexual abuse victims when they were younger, and processing what that looked like for them now in adulthood. Those have been some of the most rewarding cases I've seen and worked with.
yeah. And I feel like agree with you too. Like especially the men that I worked with that were assaulted against, they have always also like sometimes this thought like, well, am I gay now? Even though like
Yeah.
they are attracted to females, but then like that thing happened to them, and they have like this whole sexuality kind of like
Mhm.
battle within themselves, and it's also getting to the point where they can realize like, I didn't choose this. This was done to me by someone that hurt me when they shouldn't have, and then like helping them just heal from it in a way that makes the most sense for them, that honors their own journey, is just amazing work. And like, I can only imagine doing it with the military personnel.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah,
This,
and a lot of times they're the ones that had the biggest traumas. And
oh
and a lot
yeah,
of times it's like like, even as adults, some of them, they were violated by their supervisors, and these are males being violated by other male supervisors or female supervisors. And like, who am I going to tell? I'm going to get reprimanded if I say anything. My career was going to be over, and so I act like it didn't exist. And now it's like 10 years later, and I can't get it up. I can't, like, I actually want to, I'm not having careless sexual relationships like what I was doing right after I joined, and getting drunk all the time, and having multiple partners. And now I actually want to sell it. Now I can't be intimate now, and something's wrong with me. And kind of really breaking it down, like really exploring that. And a lot of times when they initially see me, it's to talk about, well, why do I pre-ejaculate? Why do I prolong ejaculation? Like, why am I having issues with my orgasm? Like, what is wrong with me? And a lot of times it's, they don't want to, they buried it so deep, that sexual trauma. That's not one of the reasons why they're coming to talk to me, and that sexual abuse. They're coming to talk to me about the current issue. And it's amazing how often it comes up they were sexually abused as a kid. And that's not what they came to therapy to talk about. And they didn't realize how much of an impact it had now, even though they were like maybe 5, 6, 10 years old, and sometimes young adults, when it happened, they don't realize the impact it has later into adulthood and the psyche, right? Because then the mind's a very powerful thing.
100%. Yeah, and, like, the mind is also really good at having suppressed memories and kind of, like,
Oh, yes. Yeah,
trying
and
to get
it's a
those things
defense
out.
mechanism. It's a defense mechanism of disassociation. People do it because otherwise you wouldn't be able to function. And that's how we get through life sometimes, by disassociation, kind of like with death. We all know we're going to die. But is that something that we're thinking about every single time in the day? No, we're disassociating that fact. Yeah, eventually we're going to die.
Yeah, really. Oh my gosh, Kimberly, I feel like we could talk for hours on this because this has been so much fun. But before we close up, are there any tips and tricks that you'd love to leave some people with?
I want to say definitely don't be afraid to be curious and explore some of those things. And especially if you have anything you want to try, be curious, explore things at curiosity. And most importantly, if you're going to do an infertility journey, being present. Because a lot of times you're so hyper focused on things that didn't work in the past, or you're so hyper focused on future things that haven't even happened yet. And it's really hard to be joyful in the moment because you feel like something's about to drop. You're about to get another set of bad news, because that's what comes with infertility: bad news after bad news after bad news. And so just being present and being kind to yourself, that's the biggest thing. And don't ever lose hope. Definitely don't lose hope, no matter where your journey takes you. And unfortunately, as a certain topic like infertility and sexual health to an extent too, you don't always get the rainbows and sunshine that you want. And so just being kind to yourself and being present in the moment, and try to certainly be curious about planning things out.
That's super great advice. And one last question. What is the best way for people to find you for them to like learn more about you?
Sure, definitely my website, www.crimsoncardinalcounseling.com. It's a mouthful. It's all one word, like it's three words into one, no hyphens or anything like that. And I'm also Kimberly Koll underscore LPC at Instagram. I'm just now getting an Instagram, so don't judge. But but yeah, yeah. And so I'm starting to get into social media a little bit, and that's my way of breaking into it. So certainly one of those two forms. The website probably the easiest way, because as my email, you can contact me on there.
So thank you so much. And all your links will be at the end of the video and below as well for people to easily click on the links too. But this has been
Awesome.
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.